Naruto vs. Sasuke is one of the greatest fights in anime history. One of the greatest fights in fiction, if we're being honest. I've done multiple videos breaking down how the raw, innovative choreography and fluid animation combined with the high stakes and a tragic emotional narrative to create something truly generational. And throughout that deep dive, I stopped to consider whether their rematch at the end of Shippuden truly lived up to their original fight. The bar was set almost unrealistically high. Not only was their rematch set in stone from the moment Sasuke emerged triumphant in their first battle, but it was something teased and set up throughout the entirety of Shippuden as both Naruto and Sasuke continued to grow ever more powerful. The challenge is, how do you top perfection? How do you recreate the magic many fans felt when watching their original fight growing up? Can you once again create a groundbreaking new standard for shonen battles with this rematch? And the more I thought about it, I came to the conclusion that I was asking the wrong questions. These two fights are meant to accomplish two different things within the narrative, and I'll go over that later. Regardless, I'm still critical of how this rematch came about, but now I can finally articulate why it left me feeling less satisfied than I wanted to be, and why all these years later when people say Naruto versus Sasuke, my mind immediately thinks of one fight and not the other. Reason number one. Naruto and Sasuke are brothers in Part 1, but they're strangers in Shippuden. As much as I would have liked more development between Naruto and Sasuke in Part 1, many of us still felt the sting of betrayal when Sasuke abandoned the village. We felt the emotional turmoil between the two as they exchanged their thoughts and emotions, and we felt the pain when Naruto failed to bring Sasuke back. In their rematch, however, whatever bond they shared has been eroded by time. Naruto may not think so, but the memes about his one-sided Sasuke obsession are pretty telling. It's even referenced in the series by both Itachi and Sasuke. And among the fandom, whenever we discuss who Naruto's best friend really is, we usually say Shikamaru, not Sasuke. And as much as one could admire Naruto for preserving this bond, which is a major theme in the series, I would argue that their connection only feels profound because of them being reincarnations of Ashura and Indra, and that them clashing was destined to happen. The power of this bond isn't forged through actual meaningful time together, but rather by fate. And something about that feels cheap when compared to Part 1, when a lot of the work to develop Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry and relationship at that point was done through actual storytelling. They spend most of Shippuden apart, evolving separately, but Sasuke in particular undergoes so many radical changes throughout the series, and Naruto is present for none of it. Ultimately, this fight was about ending the cycle of hatred more than anything else. And while that is still narratively compelling, it lacks the weight and personal intimacy of the fight in Part 1. While the scale of their battle in Shippuden is undoubtedly much bigger, their clash in OG Naruto just felt more human. That brings me to reason number 2. We are more sympathetic to Sasuke in Part 1, not Part 2. While Sasuke has people who justify his thoughts and actions up until the very end, you can't deny that the radical warpath he took following Itachi's death was extremely polarizing. When you compare it to Sasuke's decision to leave the Leaf Village to pursue power, there's a clear definitive cutoff in terms of feeling sympathy for him. As far as Sasuke is concerned, in Part 1, Itachi is the greatest threat in the world, and has proven that he can return to Sasuke's life at any time to take everything from him once again. He has weighed his options thoroughly and has made the personal calculation that crossing over to the dark side is better than living in that state of constant, debilitating fear and powerlessness. He is far too young, traumatized, and emotionally detached to express or even articulate this in a healthy manner, causing it to manifest in edgy, maniacal laughter and a cruel dismissal of Naruto and the retrieval team's sacrifices. But Sasuke is not too far gone here. He even maintains an honor code throughout the first half of Shippuden, showing major resistance to Orochimaru's dark influence on him. Throughout all the noise, Sasuke is merely a reactionary child, but he is still deserving of sympathy. That sympathy was exhausted throughout the second half of Shippuden, where one could argue that he actually was too far gone, and if not for the cycle of hatred, Naruto would have been justified in killing him in my opinion. And while many attempt to justify his actions and radical philosophy, there's a reason why Sasuke found himself so alone in the end, while Naruto had the support of friends, family, and allies. It's a contrast that Kishimoto intentionally highlights. I think the best way to support my position is with Naruto and Sasuke's own words to each other. After reuniting with Sasuke in the Land of Iron, Naruto shares that he understands Sasuke's quest for vengeance. While this is something he could not understand in Part 1, losing Jiraiya put Naruto in a depression, and seemingly losing Hinata made him surrender himself to the Nine-Tails, something that would have been utterly catastrophic if Minato didn't restore the seal. Vengeance is now something he can sympathize with. And let's not forget that Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji were willing to defy Tsunade's orders to go after Hidan and Kakazu and get revenge for what they did to Asuma. So Sasuke isn't the only person to go to the dark side or disobey an order from the village to get revenge. It's not a one-to-one comparison since Sasuke is technically committing treason by going to Orochimaru, but I'd argue that what happened to Sasuke was much more extreme and therefore so would his reaction. There's still a lot of overlap. And to my first point, I think Naruto and Sasuke's relationship could have benefited if they had a discussion about grief and vengeance to follow up from their conversation during their battle at the Final Valley when Sasuke told Naruto there's no way he could possibly understand his loss. Reconnecting at a point where they share that grief and thirst for vengeance would have been great development for their relationship. Maybe they could exchange intel on the Akatsuki so they could pursue their own separate vendettas. It would require some major timeline workarounds and edits, but I can see Sasuke coming out of that exchange with a newfound respect for Naruto. It would have definitely been a nice change of pace since the majority of their relationship in Shippuden consists of Naruto just stalking Sasuke. But back to sympathy for Sasuke or the lack thereof during their rematch. I'll close my point by stating Sasuke acknowledges that his philosophy was deeply flawed after losing to Naruto. In Part 1, I think it's fair to say that both Naruto and Sasuke were justified in feeling how they felt, especially since they were only children. The beautiful tragedy of their fight in Part 1 is that neither one of them is wrong. But in Part 2, you clearly sympathize with Naruto's optimistic philosophy more than Sasuke's isolated, draconian philosophy, and that's intentional. As a result, it makes this fight more cliché, and the ending far more predictable, making it feel less groundbreaking than their fight in Part 1. And with that, we have reason number 3. Bigger doesn't mean better. I touched on this a bit earlier, and this is a larger critique on the series as a whole, but the scale of Naruto grew so much that, for better or worse, it felt like a different anime. Some people loved the introduction of reincarnation, gods and aliens, prophecies, swapping eyeballs like it's no big deal, dimension hopping, and the giant chakra avatars. But in my personal opinion, all of these things diluted what made the fights unique and contributed to a sense of battle fatigue during the middle of the 4th Shinobi World War arc, where these insanely powerful jutsu were being spammed, making it feel like spectacle over substance. Not all fights suffered from this, though, and admittedly, Naruto and Sasuke's fight definitely gives us a great balance between choreography and the giant chakra avatars. That being said, the best moments of this fight are when the giant chakra armors are stripped away and Naruto and Sasuke are up close and personal. I've always felt like Baryon mode was the perfect final form for a Jinchuriki, and if it was a stable form without the repercussions, I would have preferred to see it go up against a more compact version of the Susanoo. I think it's a great middle ground where you keep the overwhelming power on clear display, but make it less like a giant kaiju battle. In these more refined states, the combat is faster and more fluid. They're more strategic and intentional with their movement. And ironically, the punches just hit harder when I know it's coming from their actual fist. You know, flesh and blood instead of a giant chakra manifestation. And their rematch definitely is able to reach those same elements at certain points, but their battle in OG Naruto just had so many of these raw moments that remain undefeated. Naruto punching Sasuke so hard that he falls over and grabs his face in pain in the middle of the fight just added a level of realism that was incredibly striking. Sasuke pile-driving Naruto into the ground with the Falcon Drop was another incredibly brutal, memorable moment that can only be done without the giant chakra avatars. But it's also more impactful because their desperation in this fight is causing their abilities to rapidly evolve in real time, adding to the sense of growing danger and increasingly high stakes. And even without the prophecies and the fate of the ninja world hanging in the balance, their fight in part 1 feels like it holds so much more weight, and not just because we get to explore more of the fallout from its epic conclusion. Furthermore, in Shippuden, they've reached the thin precipice of their powers. There isn't much room to grow because we've seen it all. The desperation does come in the end when they've exhausted their chakra and are wailing on each other, and I definitely appreciate those moments for how they capture that raw feeling of throwing everything they have at each other. But after Kaguya is sealed, I definitely came into Naruto and Sasuke's rematch with a hangover from the events of what I experienced to be the climax of the series. After watching the two fight together side by side to seal an alien and save the world, everything else felt like falling action, this epic rematch included. And perhaps that's the biggest difference between these two fights. Their battle in part 1 is about collapse, and it feels like the climax of the story, while part 2 is about closure, and it feels more like falling action when compared to the events of the war arc. They're meant to evoke two completely different emotions and leave two very different lasting impressions. Despite my criticisms of their rematch, I really can't knock it for that. It's still an incredible fight with some phenomenal highlights, beautiful animation, and a touching heart-to-heart between Naruto and Sasuke. I think it satisfies most of what we wanted from their final confrontation. If I had to rate these fights, I would give their battle in part 1 an 11 out of 10. A fight so good that it breaks the scaling. The entire fight will have you looking like Naruto and Sasuke in this moment when even they couldn't believe what was happening. The only negative of this fight may be the pacing due to the flashbacks, and even that may be considered a positive because of just how well those flashbacks contextualize this fight, especially since they more than make up for it when the fight really gets going. The foreshadowing setup here is brilliant, and Naruto's realization and slow acceptance that Sasuke is trying to kill him is visceral. I would rate their rematch in Shippuden a 9 out of 10. Like I said, I think it does everything right from the animation to the choreography, the symbolism, raw emotion, and callbacks, and just enough clever new tricks from both combatants to make the fight stand apart from their previous battle. I particularly like the parallel of Naruto crying in part 1, while Sasuke is the one crying in part 2, as if it's a physical symbol that Naruto has finally gotten through and connected with Sasuke. The reconciliation is very heartwarming here. I do have to knock off points for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, and that Naruto is implied to be holding back, as well as Sasuke's motivation feeling somewhat forced, cliché, and less compelling than his motivation in part 1. Both are masterfully done, but nearly everything their fight in part 2 does, I feel like part 1 does it just a little bit better. But like I said, at the end of the day, whenever the topic of Naruto versus Sasuke comes up, I will always think of their epic battle at the end of part 1, more than their rematch in Shippuden. But what do you guys think? Am I blinded by childhood nostalgia? Which fight do you think was better? Which one left a bigger impression on you and why? Leave your thoughts down below. Please leave a like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.